Welcome aboard. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and we get to go traveling by train today. And just the fella that can tell us about old-fashioned trains around Southern Oregon and over Klamath Way, huh? You are Lowell?
Lowell Ford.
Lowell
Ford.
Tell me, yeah, Fords, how did they get interested in trains? I thought they were all about cars.
Well, my father was interested in trains as a boy, and I think the time before I brought some of his things. And so when I was in my middle 20s, I continued with building this.
This is not a new toy then.
No, it's built in the early 60s.
You know, when I saw this, I was out at Pottsville, and they were having a tractor show. But Lowell has something special out at Pottsville. Every year, for how many years have you been running the train?
It's 8 or 9 years now.
Now, you have lots of help doing this?
Well, at times we do. Other times we don't have all the help that we need.
There's a nice lady out there helping with the train. Who's she?
Well, are you talking about my wife or my daughter or my granddaughter?
Oh, now those are the women that were there.
All
now,
three of them help, yes.
And this is what's it called?
It's called a hand pumper.
And what's it used for?
Well, this was used in larger form, of course. There would be 4 men who could get onto it and go up and down the track to work and pull a little car behind them with some tools so they could work on the track.
Well, I've been told that when they had a problem over in Glendale, they took a hand cart. Now, would that have been like this in the early 30s? Or
maybe by then they were having gasoline-operated hand cars.
So this goes up and down, and just like pumping on a swing,
That's
it
right.
propels it.
Can't do very much, but
Up and down.
well, like that.
Yeah, and its wheels are the kind like on trains, right? I
Yes,
mean,
only these are made out of wood. These are not steel wheels.
And what's this wooden thing for?
That was one of the original plywood gears that I made when I first started making this.
Because
about 45, 50 years ago.
Well, now, you're not the first in your family to like toys, are you?
No.
Tell me about, where does this heritage come from?
Well, some of it may have been from the fact that my grandfather had a toy store.
Ah, and that was, I remember you telling us, Oakland, California?
Oakland, California.
And that was way back in turn of the century?
Probably in the maybe late 1800s, early 1900s.
And that toy, did it go through into the earthquake and the fire and all that?
My father did. We talked about that some before the 1906 earthquake. Yes.
And now, so they love toys, and it's only natural that a kid comes along. What about this costume you're wearing, and brought me the same costume to show off?
This is a typical uniform that the firemen and the engineers wore when they had steam engines.
Now, this neckerchief looks a little more like cowboy western.
Well, it has a use also for the firemen because it keeps cinders off of their back of their neck.
Of course, cinders, because they're burning what?
They're burning coal, and oil could do it too.
And then in the early trains, I understand they used timbers. They used
wood, yes.
And somebody, someplace that I talked to, their dad was a wood supplier for the train. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
Oh, yes. I have a book that talks about one trip 82 miles down in California where they used 16 cords of wood for that one trip.
That's a whole lot. I mean, a cord of wood is more than a Davino stack.
That's
6
right.
foot high?
But their lengths were 4 feet, not the normal 16 inches that we put in.
Okay, so how would you load I was going to say furnace. There's probably a right word for that.
A firebox.
Okay, tell me. Somebody,
Yeah, they'd go back to the tender where they had the firewood or the coal, but the firewood, they'd pick up a chunk of it, 4 feet long, swing around, step on a stepping pedal that would open the fire door. They'd open up this way and they'd throw it in.
Well,
let it go, turn around and go get another one.
isn't there a song about put another coal on the fire or something and get that engine going?
If there is, I can't think of it right at the moment.
Now, you brought this, and I saw it out at Pottsville, and I said, oh, please, please bring it. 2 kids were on either side, on the railroad tracks.
That's right.
And those tracks come from where to where? I mean, you brought those from home?
No, they belonged to Deb's Potts, who was the owner of Pottsville at the time. And I asked him if I could lay some down and take them up. And over the years, we settled on a place where we wouldn't have to take them up all the time.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned Deb Potts, because he loved things old. He loved to show people. In fact, Pottsville that you just mentioned is open to all of us.
Right, it's primarily open on Father's Day weekend because of the tractor and engine show, but I think they have some other meetings there too, and I think Deb's was the kind of fellow that said anybody could come, stay whenever they wanted to. And I don't know that he had any known enemies.
Never have I heard an unkind word said about Deb's, because he showed me such kindness, and I interviewed him on film 4 times, but in person probably 20, 30 hours, because I just loved storytelling, and he told the stories. He seemed to have all the details right every time. One of the funniest ones was he went from a logger, war vet and logging, to the Senate, first to the mayorship, and then to the Senate, and then to the head of the Senate, where, you know, here's this guy that had to have help, an open book test to pass the 8th grade. And he's given us all those treasures out at Pottsville. He welcomed you there.
Yes. He was honored well enough, too, that there is a bust in the courthouse of him.
Right, and all of the videos that I've done about Deb's are archived in the state archival archive in Portland.
I think he saw the value of what this could do down the road.
Oh,
of,
absolutely.
the influence that it could have on the children.
You took a little vote while we were there, and I one of these is my mark. Is this?
No, this is what we're referring to.
Oh, this is a toy, of course. Where'd you find it?
I was tearing down a house 2 doors down from us, and the man was going to just tear it down with his heavy equipment and throw it in a dump truck and be gone with it. But I believe the Lord held him off from being able to do it while I had an operation. And 3 days after the operation, I was there tearing the house down again. And underneath the floor, on the ground, I found that.
Now, do you think, how to get there? Do you have any idea? Supposedly these ball dome lids are something out of the 1950s or 40s.
I believe that it probably was placed there somehow, either placed or dropped early 1950s, according to some research that I did. And I believe it was either a father who made that for his son, or a boy who made it himself and was coached.
Now, these nails, you don't usually see those, but the fourth one is quite different. Had you noticed that?
Yes, I noticed that one was different than the others. Yeah.
See, I hammer very much like that. Like, oh, well, bend it over. I just love this because it's a stick of a wood that really wasn't good enough for anything but the fire. Yeah. And they made this lovely, lovely.
Now, if I'm permitted to say so, that's history, but I believe that I was allowed to find it because there's another story behind that. Can I tell that?
Absolutely. What's the other story?
Well, I liken that car to us.
Okay.
I liken the Father that built that to our Heavenly Father.
Okay, now.
And He's looking down on us.
And sees a block of wood.
Right.
And some rusty.
To a lot of people, we are worthless, but to Him, God, we are priceless.
Oh, I love it. Now, this says priceless. This was out at Pottsville, and you took a vote.
The public voted as they came and saw this car.
Is it priceless? My vote is right about in here. I was there on Sunday. Is it worthless? And then we think maybe some kids scribbled on here, but
right.
It's still like 6-1, even if those count.
Right.
This was found under the house, under the old house.
You can reach it better than I can if you want to show the pictures of that house.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you show me which one of these is the picture of the house.
Okay, this one here is the house.
Okay. Just ordinary small.
I heard it started out as a garage, and then they built into it later.
And next door to that was this?
On the same property is the little cabin that they built with short 2x4s that came from the mill.
What mill's that?
Well, I presume that it was probably the mill in Kirby,
now,
which is that's
that
the picture.
Is this the mill in Kirby?
That's the mill in Kirby before.
This is history now.
This is history. My wife took that on the last day that they operated, and all of the steam ports were blowing at that moment.
Kind of in celebration or salute or?
And at first I hated the sound. It woke me up at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Call you to work, huh?
Not me, other people.
Right.
But calling people to work. And after a while, when they shut down, I miss it.
There you go. You know, I love the noon whistle. I don't know whatever happened or who used to blow the noon whistle, but folks, do you remember? That was part of our growing up. That was part of our history.
Mm-hmm.
You've brought some other pictures that just, I can hardly even imagine. Now, that's the train I got to ride on, right?
Yes.
And I was back here. You have two different types of seats. There were the padded seats that are upholstered, but I happened to be sitting on the wooden benches. Is that
well,
on
I'll
purpose?
tell you a secret. They were all wooden benches with just a thin fabric on them, so neither one of them were cushioned.
Well, it looks like first class is what I didn't get on, and I got on back with the budget. What's it called? There must have been different classes on trains.
Oh, well, it was first class and second class, third class, and maybe they went as far as fourth class, I'm not sure.
That was probably on a straight chair or something. This is now am I jumping from your train to somebody else's train here?
Yes,
Oh, but this is your train, isn't it?
well, that's a through trestle on my place, yes. The train goes through that. It's 22 feet long and about 6 feet off the ground.
And this is when it was in process. It's now finished.
Well, more finished.
What a treat to go out. Now, do you open this to special invitation, or is it just for you and your family to enjoy?
We are zoned residential, and so we cannot advertise to do it publicly. However, if anybody learns about us and gives us a call first, I'd be more than happy to show them.
Oh, I've got a couple of nephews that I think would just love to come and see this. They were at Pottsville this weekend and got to see you there, but no train trestle there. What about this? This looks like the real thing.
It is, and the man who owns it is Bert Beecher, and I was able to operate it once or twice up in Deadwood. That's where it is now.
Well, now, where's Deadwood?
It's about 20 miles east of Florence on the coast, and it's on private land.
Now, are they, he's obviously a train buff if he even has this
That's right.
caboose in.
He was in the process of building that when I took the picture.
Because would he have started out from zero? I mean, what do you start with?
I guess
No chassis, no.
I guess you start with the wheels, or I don't know.
And just.
When I built my rolling stock, I started with the framework, and then from there I put wheels under it.
Now, did you size and proportion and all? Is it according to scale?
Mine isn't, and I'm not sure how close his is either.
But the seat's big enough for me to sit comfortably. Now, this is out of Pottsville. That's the way we did it?
This is the one in Cave Junction.
Oh, what about Cave Junction? What do they have there?
Well, for 3 or 4 years, I took my equipment there and set up some track on a basketball court area in the city park, and did the same thing. This is a ministry for us.
It is just fantastic that you can share, because you have a card, a little card that you gave me that says, can you quote it?
Well, I don't know if don't remember a card as such, but we have what we call a gospel tract, and it has a picture of a switch on one side, and it says something to the effect of, you're either going to heaven or hell, and you have to throw the switch and make your decision spiritually. So it's a crossover connection to the railroad.
And your wife was the very one who ran ahead of my little train ride Sunday and threw the switch so that we didn't go back the same way we came. We went.
Well, we were taking turns. See, we have another hand pumper that's larger than this for the bigger kids. So we had a train running, and then we had 2 hand pumpers running, and we had to take turns, just like the trains have to on the real railroads.
Oh.
They can't all use the same track at the same time. Right.
We don't like that. You brought some things in the cardboard box. What in the world?
Well,
These aren't what you'd call made to look old. These are old.
They're pretty old. Ours was the last one to be painted by a man by the name of Cecil Hathaway, who is an old history man, but he's passed away years ago. But he loved to paint these signs and put them on a post for everybody that lived on our street. And I have 6 of them.
Okay, so Mr. Ford, what do you know about Mr. Ford?
Well, that's me.
Oh, of course. He's not that old. What about Mr.
Well, we came in 1972 to buy the property there, and so he made that sign in 1972.
What about Bert?
Well, he was 2 doors down.
And a vintage fella?
This is the property that we talked about for this car.
Ah, so they go together.
That's right.
And
So.
Now, these hung out on the...
They were up on a post down at the highway so that anybody wanting to know who lived up on the hill.
Oh, goodness.
Now, that's Scopex. You can't read it much anymore, but...
You sort of make it out. Then we've got...
And that was Melvin Starks.
Well, what can you tell me about Melvin?
Well, they've been there a long time. He and his brother, Everett Starks. And they were one of the first people to live up on this hill that was divided for the mill workers at this mill. And Bert Scott told me that to get up that hill, they put their belongings in 55-gallon or wooden barrels and rolled them up the hill. Because if you go up that road today, it's steep, but you look at the old contour, it's steeper yet, so cars couldn't go up it.
Not even in reverse, huh?
Well, I don't know.
I hear that on going down I-5, 99, that some of those early cars couldn't go forward, but they could turn around and back up the hill.
I've heard rumors to that too, and I don't disbelieve it.
Now, so then he had early stories for you, because he'd been around for a long time.
Bert Scott? Mm-hmm. Yes. When I first met him, I was trying to build our cabin, and he came over and we sat and talked amongst the mosquitoes while I was trying to build a house. Well, over the years, we got to where we'd sit and talk for an hour and a half, and then he would help me with things and more than make up the time. He was a cat skinner, operated cats and did logging.
Now that's a heavy machinery cat.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty big profession, right?
Yes.
In lumbering to...
Yeah. There's not time to even get started with the stories that he told me.
Oh, I hope you'll sit with a microphone and tape record some of this.
Yeah. But then the last one there is the man who did the painting of these signs.
Oh, my.
Cecil Hathaway. And hence the name of the road that we live on, Hathaway Drive, after him. He worked in the Forest Service for a number of early years and painted signs for the forest so that people would know where to go in the forest.
Now that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Now, tell me about Mr. Hathaway. How did you happen to know him?
Well, he lived, he's
right.
Passed away now. He lived down at the end of the road, which was dead-ended.
And he was a friendly kind of fella, and would he talk
Yeah,
about early days?
Yes. Yeah, I'd go down and talk with him, but I don't remember too many of his stories. I didn't talk to him as much as I did Bert.
Yeah, because Bert was the chatty one, right?
Yeah.
Are your neighbors pretty excited about what you've done?
Well, some of them are.
You know what impressed me?
Some of them don't even know what I'm doing, I guess.
What I was so impressed was this was the year I met you was the year there'd been the big fire out in Illinois Valley, or Illinois, as us old-timers say. And everything had been cleaned up to limit fire danger, and yet you were ready to vacate, but you didn't have to.
That's right. For a couple of days, it was a half-hour's notice to leave.
Scary?
It was awesome.
I
It
know
was
that
awesome.
that smoke touched everything.
The entire sky was covered with smoke. Many times you'll see large forest fires, but you can see a little bit of the sky somewhere, someplace, but this was entirely covered.
And it's called what's the fire name?
It was called the Biscuit Fire. Over 500,000 acres, I think, close
Into
to 500,000
California.
acres.
Into government land. In the government land, they couldn't fight the fire on. They didn't want roads in, so they just had to let it burn, which doesn't make sense to me. But as soon as it got on to other lands, there were fighters ready. Even jumped over 199.
Yes,
Down
it
in
got into the
California.
other side of Selma, I think, for a while. I'm not real sure on that. Don't quote
Well,
me.
I saw it. I saw the burn on both sides in California, because it
Okay.
went clear to O'Brien, beyond O'Brien, down to California. You have come with these treasures, and I just want to thank you so much. It's a privilege to see people make things that kids can see the way it was done, and we can remember how way back when.
Yes.
Genius. It's probably got a bunch of patents on how to do gears and wheels and.
Well, I try to remain modest.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us again.
Okay.
Thanks for keeping history alive. And if you'd like some volunteers, let's just ask them to get in touch with you if they'd
right.
like to help with Pottsville or something similar.
Okay.
Volunteer.
Maybe working with Mr. Beecher with his equipment to greatly enlarged railroad that could be used year-round
Wouldn't that be fun?
as a witness for the Lord.
Thank you so much for being my guest. I'm Bernie Martin Beck saying, oh, how do I whistle?
I suppose you want this one too.
We've come to a stop.